Yeah, I'm pretty excited. So this week we have Tyler Brown, who's a legend in the sport of BMX racing. He's been doing so much on and off the bike for, shoot, I don't know, over 20 years. It's going to be cool. It's going to be pretty cool to jump into a conversation and to talk about everything that he's done into the sport. Because I mean, he's traveled all around the world, racing at the highest level of the sport, and now he's running two tracks. He does a lot of summer camps, has a team, has I think a bike shop, his own brand, a lot of stuff that I'm really looking forward to diving into and yeah, just hearing about his whole story and everything he's got going on.
And he's got a family. So
Yeah.
talk about balancing it all, Will. That's impressive, and I can't wait to understand the man behind the plan.
Yeah. Yeah, he has to be probably planned and pretty organized too. Because I think I've seen on his social media today, he was talking about putting in like crazy hours at the track just running a summer camp program. So balancing that with family, I'm sure is takes takes some skill.
Well, I mean, you know better than anybody, Will. You run camps, you run a farm, you built a track. I think it's just what elite athletes do. They're not gonna sit and wait for opportunity to arrive. They're gonna go create it, right? They've got to create the outcomes they want. So, and that's winning. So, I think you
Yeah.
get that, Will.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just being probably really intentional with their time and being very intentional with their energy and probably being bullseye focused on one thing and then putting that time and energy into doing that. But hey, let's see where he is.
Well,
Let's see
that
where he
reminds
is
me,
because
Will, I remember you writing out in one of your notebooks a long time ago when we were having conversations like this before. You envisioned exactly what you're doing today. So that's what it takes, creating the vision, and you put pen on paper, and now you're living it. So I think that is one of the highest the highest accolades I could ever give you is the fact that you engineered, you created, you envisioned what you're doing today. And how few people take the time to do what you've done consistently. And now look at you. Acre Brand Farms is a real thing. And
yeah,
God, we talked about that a decade ago. It's just crazy.
yeah, yeah, it is crazy to like wake up every day and it's almost like a deja vu. It's like, okay, I've been here, I've seen this. And it's like it's all of those nights 5, 6 years ago, just trying to picture this life I wanted to create in my head and waking up and trying to picture it and then writing it down in that book that, I write everything down in, and then all of a sudden it's like now it's happening. I'm starting to see all the things that I intended years ago in my life, and it it, it it's almost awe inspiring and like shocking. It's like, wow, like we really do get what we think about. So like, it gives you almost like a sense of responsibility. It's like we got to be careful. We have to be careful where we put our attention and where we direct our thoughts because it really does create and affect our life. Which is it can be scary or it could be like really motivating. You know what I mean? To like know that we actually have the power to create the life that we want to live or have the power to, create our biggest fears a lot of times.
Yeah, that's so cool to hear. And with the power of Zoom, I see that Tyler has arrived in the waiting room. I'm going to let him in, Will,
Sweet, sweet. Get them in there.
because I can't wait to see what he's engineered.
Yo,
Tyler Brown, what's up, man?
what up, dude? How are you?
Good. How are you? Can you hear me and see me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm just at the BMX track, so you got a BMX track background.
That's sweet. So I'm with our co-host, Dr. Edwin Adams. He's on the other line and doing the back end as well.
What's up,
Okay, sweet.
Tyler? Nice to
Hey,
meet
how
you,
are you?
brother.
Thanks for
So
Privileged to
what's
having me
be
in.
on
going
the
on,
phone
man?
with you, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you got going on today, man? What are you doing?
just wrapped up our first ever Stasic summer camp, and then got a little bit of time off before I do some private coaching, and then we'd run races tonight.
Nice. And that's at San Diego BMX?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, you're running 2 tracks now, aren't you?
Yeah, I have here and then down at Chula Vista BMX as well. Our camp, our summer camp starts next week down there.
So you're just switching back and forth from doing camps at each track? Nice, nice.
Yeah, we've got 5 weeks of camp. Everything that we do out here at San Diego BMX is a lot popular, so all these camps are filled up, and then we just have 1 week down at Chula Vista.
Nice, nice. How come you think that the San Diego track is more popular?
It's just in a better location. You have like 4 freeways that all converge, and we're just right in the middle of all of that. As where Chula Vista is kind of like, you can't really go much further south or east, or you're like either in Mexico or in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I read on maybe it was your post today, like how you're putting in some crazy amount of hours on both of these tracks.
Yeah, summer camp season, I think it was last week, it was 71 hours a week. So it's pretty full on.
And what is that 71 hours looking like for you now?
Well, because we still do all of our other programs, right? So between the 2 tracks, we're open 7 days a week. So we still do all that, but then we have summer camp going on as well all day. So like I'll leave my house in the morning at about 7:30 to go get water, ice, and drinks for the summer camp. We set the track up. We run summer camp all day. Literally, I have my other coaches close down camp while I do my private lessons with my private lesson kids. And then that typically is about 15 minutes off from that. And then we'll start either a race or a practice or something like that, which will usually wrap up anywhere from 7 to 9:30 at night, depending on what it is that day.
Did you say that your track is open 7 days a week?
Between the 2 tracks, yeah, we're open 7 days a week.
Yeah, that's sweet. And then how far is one track from the other?
About a half hour.
Oh, nice, nice. Do you get like a lot of crossover, or does each kid kind of stay at each track?
We need to get more crossover. We don't have a ton. Chula Vista BMX, we had a big following there, and then we got shut down for like a year and a half, and then we kind of migrated up here to San Diego BMX, and then this place just became so popular. That program basically is it's a full right from the bottom.
Nice, nice. That's pretty cool. So, how long have you been running each track?
I've been running Chula now for, this will be 11 years. And then San Diego BMX, this is my 3rd year.
How old were you when you started running Chula?
Let's see, I would have been 38, 30, 37, 27.
27 when you started running Chula?
Yeah.
And you're still racing elite then, or what was that like?
Yeah, finishing up my elite career at that time. I started running the track. It was kind of a weird spot, right? Because we just finished the 2012 Olympics, which I had a really bad crash before. 2008, I made the long team. 2012, I went all in. It didn't work out. And then, so I was kind of at that point where I was like, what do I do next? What's kind of my plan? Where do I fit in? Am I still racing? Am I not? I don't know. And then the USA BMX called me and said, hey, do you have any interest in taking over one of our tracks here in Chula? I said, yes, absolutely. I sent you an email about it 6 months ago. And they're, we missed that email. We didn't see it. So I took that over, and then I got hit up by
USA BMX reached out to you and asked you to run the track. And what was their indication that you might be good at that, or like want to run the track?
I did send them an email a few months
other than the email that they missed.
Yeah. Oh, I missed the email. We didn't see it. Can you give me more info? I think probably because I was just like I don't know why they thought, actually. It was just something that Chris Loon had hit me up. Hey, do you ever have any interest in running a track? I said, yeah, I want to run a track. I'd love to. That'd be sweet.
Yeah.
So I started running that, and then a couple months later, Steve Spencer with GT sent me a DM. Actually, he was like, "Hey, what are you doing next year? What are your plans?" And then I kind of took over the GT race program and ran that, and that was kind of like my remotivation back into BMX. Okay, I have my direction. I know what I'm doing now.
Yeah, GT is definitely one of the most legendary brands in not only our sport, but just probably cycling in general. What was it like getting contacted by GT to ride for them, or to just be a part of their program?
It was pretty cool for that exact reason, like you said, right? Like, like, I'll give you an example. When you're on an airplane and people go, "Oh, what do you do?" Like, "Oh, I race professional BMX." Number one, they don't really know what that is always.
Yeah.
Two, like, at the time I rode for Croupi, which is a great BMX brand. They go, who do you ride for? Do you have any sponsors? Oh yeah, Croupi. And they go, "Oh, never heard of it," right?
Yeah.
As soon as you go, "Oh, I ride for GT bicycles," they go, "Oh, I had a GT," or, "Oh, I had a Mach 1," and they instantly know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
I'm
just
pretty sure my first bike was a GT.
exactly. And I had one as well, right? We all did at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. So how old were you when you started racing?
I didn't start racing until I was a little bit older. I was 12 turning 13.
Really, really? How was that? Was that tough?
Yeah, it was like, I think it was a blessing and a curse too, right? Because when all the other kids hit that 16-year-old thing where they're like starting to get over racing and get cars and girls and stuff like that, like, I was still super motivated because at that point I was only a couple years into it. Um,
Yeah. Okay.
Gate with like Bubba and Mike Day and all those other fast guys who absolutely killed it. They had like 6 years more of experience than me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Did
So
I
I was,
read somewhere? Did I read somewhere that you didn't grow up riding or started in California? Like, aren't you from maybe Colorado or something like
yeah,
that?
you're right. You're correct. Yep.
Okay, okay. So you started in Colorado, and it wasn't as big there because pretty much everything was in California at that point, or did you have a pretty good ride-in scene out there?
I mean, we had an okay scene, but nothing like that was out here in California. Like, I'm sure you know David Herman, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of
So
course.
he was my little brother's age, so he used to come over and spend the night at my house with my little brother. So they used to always hang out. But he was like a fair bit younger than me, so we weren't battling and stuff like that. So we had a good little riding scene, but nothing that you would have in California because we're taking 3 months off out of the year because it's snowing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I'm always in awe to hear about the athletes who are living in places where they're not. Because I grew up in Florida. Always riding in Florida, where it's like we're always riding. So it's like I couldn't imagine, especially like talking to Tori and whatnot, where it's like they're not riding for months and months at a time, and then they're coming back. It's like, how can they be so good? But it managed.
I think like there's one side of it that you're taking away from the bike and it's hard to keep that going. But then the other side, it always like motivates you and fuels your fire because you can't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like you just couldn't wait to get back on the track again. Every second I had on the track, I took advantage of it and I loved it. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. So when you started getting more serious, you said like 14, 15, 16. Like, were you getting sponsors, or were you winning races, or were you struggling a bit, or how was the amateur career before you turned pro?
I had a very short, quick amateur career. It was successful to the point where I never had like the factory ride. I mean, until the very, very end. And I was always like, I would win and get top threes and stuff like that. My last year as amateur, I finished like nag 3. I went into grands nag 1, 2. So I think I was nag 2, but then Brandon Nichols turned pro. So I guess that technically would have made me nag 1 going into grands. Uh,
Yeah.
so I did good, but I only had a couple years in amateur because if you think I was 13 when I really started my first full season, I was 12 turning 13, and I turned pro when I was 17 turning 18. So I just didn't have a lot of time in the amateur class.
Yeah, that's actually kind of cool to hear because it's like, most of the best kids, like, especially because I'm around Jeremy Smith all the time, like he was practically born on a bicycle, and like that's kind of how like I picture like Mike Day and Bubba Harris too, like they're doing it. I mean, who knows, like before they're even 8 years old, like still learning to move their body. And then it's like when you even see kids like in the summer camp, like it's such a disadvantage almost when they're starting at 11, 12 years old because they've already learned so many movements, so like it's cool
Absolutely.
to hear about how late you started and you had a pretty damn good career, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. I think, like I said, on the experience side, it was a little bit tricky, but on the motivation side, it kept me hyped up because I was just so hungry and wanted it so bad. As were some of those other kids are maybe feeling a little bit of burnout. It allowed me to keep going.
Yeah. So like, how was it turning pro? Did you just turn yourself up, or did you have some support from sponsors, or how'd that work?
Yeah, I mean, at that time, there wasn't a 17, 18 expert class. It was 17 and 18 expert. And I watched all the 18 experts, and I think they had semis like twice all year. And it was just super unmotivating to be like, man, I got to like race all year and basically just show up, race first round and main event. And Bubba had turned the year before me and showed some success. Donnie was in the mix. Mike Day, all those guys were kind of in the mix doing their thing. I'm like, man, like I'm racing these guys. Like I want to turn pro. So I was riding for S&M at the time. And I just told him, I was like, yeah, dude, I want to go pro next year. Luckily, he was cool with it. And then I did better than he anticipated. So we ended up parting ways mid-season because he already had Neil Wood, who was obviously like the face behind S&M. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we parted ways mid-season, and then I found myself with Action Bikes, like a local Texas bike shop that took really good care of me, and then finished out my year with them, and then kind of slowly kept graduating and building from there.
Where were you, or so how old were you when you turned pro? You said 18?
I was 17. Yeah, I was 17 years old, but that year I was 17 turning 18.
Yeah. And then where did you live, or were you still at mom and dad, or like, were you getting some money for some support, or?
No money. Yeah. I mean, I still lived at home. I lived at home for a long time just because I think as a pro rider, number one, it's hard to get paid to live on your own. Number two, we're always gone so much. It didn't really make sense for me to get my own place. I was riding for S&M at the time, and that was strictly like, we'll pay your entry fees, we'll give you all the bike stuff, and maybe a cover a flight here and there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the action actually a little better because I would get some bonuses and contingencies and stuff like that.
And when you turned pro, you started racing a pro, right? Is that how it was back then?
Yeah.
And what year was that?
Geez, that would have been 85. That would have been like 2003 is when I turned.
How old are you now?
I'm 30. I just turned 38.
Oh, nice. When was your birthday?
Mine's May 22nd.
Oh, I'm May 21st.
Oh,
That's it's super close.
there you go.
Okay, so you turned pro, you started riding for a local bike shop team, and they're giving you some contingency deals as a pro. So that kind of means like if you're on the podium, like they're throwing you some cash too.
Yeah, and luckily I did pretty good in A Pro. I pretty much was on the podium every weekend, so I was making some decent little cash, enough to pay my expenses and stuff like that. And then just slowly started working my way up with sponsors and stuff like that to do a little bit better, do a little bit more each year and stuff.
And then how long were you A Pro before you started racing Elite, or then it was called Double A Pro, correct?
Correct. We had back then it was a money cap, so you couldn't race, and once you couldn't stay A Pro once you earned $3,000. So you're looking at like mid-season, I earned my $3,000, and then I was racing Double A.
Oh, that's pretty quick, huh?
Yeah. So you would go through like typically like the top kids would turn, unless you self-turn like Bubba did, you would turn Double A by mid-year, and then you're just kind of Double A from there on out.
But Bubba self-turned, like he didn't even bother making the $3,000.
No, he did like the first 2 races, and he's like, "What's the point in this? I'm gonna turn Double A anyway. I'm just gonna self-turn."
Right on. So you made your money and you went to Elite. Now all of a sudden, like you're racing the big dogs. Like who were the guys that were on top running the show then?
It was Randy Stumphauser, Thomas Allier, Greg Romero, Dale Holmes, Christophe Levesque, all of those guys. I mean, I could go on Jamie Staff. We could go on for days for probably all of those top dogs. They were kind of finishing out their pro career while I was getting mine rolling.
So you're turning Elite probably around the summertime. So then you still had another like half of the season before going into Grands. What was your first like 6 months of pro or your rookie season like?
It was actually really good. I think I made almost all my mains. I didn't make Grands main, but I made all of my big mains. Like I made like the Fall Nationals. I made all my mains there, which that one was like a huge one for me because I'll always remember I was in semis and Randy Stumphauser was in 4th, and we're going to the pro section. I'm like, well, great. I'm not going to pass Randy Stumphauser. This is over. And I ended up passing him in mains. And like, I think that was like the coolest thing ever for me, is just to be able to battle with a guy like him. That year was really good. Year 2 was a nightmare year. I did horrible in my second year as pro.
Why do you say that?
I think I had a couple injuries. I broke my wrist and a few other little things. And I think like year 1, I ran off rookie hype. And then year 2, it was like, it kind of set in and it was a little bit more real of this is my job. This is what I do now. And that combined with like just little injuries and stuff like that, I struggled year number 2.
What was the training like then? Was it a lot different than how it is now, or is it pretty similar?
I don't think there really was much training back then, right? So
what were you doing as training?
I mean, I was just ride my bike. I'd go to Orange Y and do gates. I'd go to Sheep Hills. you hit the gym, but you're in the gym like 5 days a week. Like I'm trying to look as buff as Will, right? Like I'm doing my bench press, my curls. Like I'm just in the gym to work out and be a. At that point, I lived on the beach, be a buff 19-year-old pro BMXer who I could go to the beach and you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I've definitely been there.
Yeah. So fast forward
So
to
you
2000.
moved out to California at that time?
Right.
Or because
I
you
was
said that you lived on the beach. I don't think there's beaches in Colorado.
I moved out to California when I was about 15 years old. We had lived in Colorado at the time, and I was
Oh,
single
you
mom.
and your mom did that, right?
My mom and brother. Yeah, we lived in Colorado, and we just single mom story. Like we were broke all the time. We didn't have any money, and she went to me and my brother, and she said, "Hey, do you guys want to stay in a house and race locals, or keep racing these nationals?" And obviously, we wanted to race nationals, so we sold our house. We sold everything that we owned. We moved into a motorhome. My mom would work staging on the weekends, sell bike parts during the week, and drive us to the next national. And we toured the country to figure out where we wanted to move. And then at that time, all the pros lived in Orange County, so we moved to Orange County because I wanted to be a pro BMXer, and we moved there.
That's actually so cool. That's so cool just to hear the ambition and the story and just like the going all in. I didn't realize you had a brother that raced too.
Yeah. So like I was super blessed, man. Like I owe my whole pro career to my mom. Because if it wasn't for her giving me that opportunity, she just saw that I had a passion, and she went all in. And we didn't have much, so at times we lived out of our car and things like that, but she always made it work and made sure we had what we needed. And my brother raced. He stopped racing when we moved to California because I think he just kind of got sick of being Tyler Brown's little brother, and just wanted to his own identity and do his own thing. So he stopped racing at that time, and then I was just in a prime spot. I mean, I was with all the pros and doing what I wanted to do, so it was awesome.
Yeah. What was one of the biggest things that you learned or was like a big takeaway from like coming from Colorado, doing more locals, and then all of a sudden you're living where all the pros are living and you're just kind of all in the sport?
I don't know if I think I just learned more lessons along the process to get there rather than actually being there, right? Like it's weird because Colorado, everybody races. Like you just race every week, you're a racer. And in SoCal, like you're too factory if you race a local night. So oddly enough, I raced less when I moved to California than when I lived in Colorado. Just because I have a class. So, but just I think being out here, being around the pros, and just I was that little kid in the background that if gate 8 was open, I was that 16-year-old kid that was in the gate. If they were at Sheep Hills, like I was begging my mom to take me to Sheep Hills so I could go ride with them. I just followed the pros around like a little puppy dog.
Yeah. Yeah. And then throughout that process, like they say, you become an average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. So like if you're kind of putting yourself with the pros, it's hard to not eventually become a pro. It's kind of like, if you're around friends that, all do ice cream, eventually they're going to learn, you know what I mean? Like where the best ice cream's made and what's selling the most, right?
Yeah, I love it. No, I think that's a great saying. I always try to be the dumbest, brokest.
I heard that recently though. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Wait, what were you going to say? You try to be the dumbest, brokest?
I always try to be the dumbest, brokest, slowest person in the room. So I want to be around those that are going to elevate me and push me to be better rather than keep me on their level. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's really cool. So when I was, I don't know if I was like 14, 15, and I was first starting to see you on the scene where I'm like watching all the races, I remember two things, first, I can't remember which one was first, but you were riding for Avent Bombshell, right?
Yep.
And then there was one time where you were like doing World Cup races just in jeans. Like, how much time was in between from like the second year, just starting to get sponsors, to then riding for Avent Bombshell? Because the jeans was after Avent Bombshell, right?
We had a few years in there, and some cool stuff happened in the way, just in regards to like talking to training. Like in 2005, there was the UCI Center in Aigle, Switzerland, open up to have their first BMX program, and I was the only American. I got invited to go live in Europe for 3 months and be a part of that program. And that program really was like an eye opener as far as like, this is how you train. This is what you do. Like a serious, legit pro training experience. It was ran by 2 really good coaches. The head coach at the time, who was Christophe Levesque's coach, was kind of like the main operator behind the program. And then we had a good guy who was hands-on there with us all the time. So learning how to train like that, that's what kind of started me with Avent Bombshell the following year. And then I rode for them again, and it was an absolute nightmare for year 2. Like They ended up owing me a bunch of money. They kind of shaded out on their contract and stuff, and that's what led into the jeans and t-shirt because I didn't have a ride the following year. And I was trying to eke
Which,
a deal.
like, so many kids thought that was so cool. You know what I mean? Because, like, you're at the highest level of the sport, racing the World Cup Series. Everyone's wearing their goggles and their helmet, and this dude's like standing out wearing jeans and a long sleeve shirt, like just looking like a legend.
So, so that one was cool because obviously it was the first World Cup of the year. I had no sponsor. I was trying to get a deal with Hurley at the time, who hooked me up with a ton of clothes, and we were working on setting something up to like basically just race in their gear. And the first World Cup comes up, and there I found a plane ticket to Madrid, Spain, for $540. Like, forget it, $540. Like, I'm in. I'm going. Let's go. I ended up going, and yeah, I ended up making the main event and got fourth place. And so I can say that I'm the only guy in World Cup history to make a main in jeans. That's fame. I'll take one thing away. That'll be it.
Yeah, that's cool. And I feel like the sport really changed so much throughout probably just your pro career. You know, it's kind of when the Supercross and the Olympics and the World Cups were really first getting introduced into the sport. What was it like coming from Colorado, riding like probably small flat hill tracks, and then all of a sudden going from flying to Spain and jumping on a huge box? You know what I mean? Like with just huge gaps in between.
Yeah, I think I hit it at a right time because I was like that young teenager that like at that point I didn't really have or young 20s, I guess at that point. I didn't really have a spear switch, and it was just go full throttle. So I was at a perfect time in my career to be pushed on that because I was able to go all in, and kind of where the older guys were kind of a little bit more timid and afraid, which fair enough, I would be if I had to do that now. But I was at a good time for my career because I was able to just be one of the first guys down the hill and just go for it right away.
Yeah. And what was kind of the transition, or was there a bit of a transition where you felt like you were climbing, and then starting to feel like some senses of like, all right, maybe this is leading towards the end of my elite career?
Yeah, it's weird. Like I felt like I've had a handful of my whole elite career was kind of a roller coaster, right? Like I'd have really good years and really bad years, and it was always just kind of an up and down and up and down. Um, and oddly enough, I feel like my last little bit as elite, I think I was faster and better once I had turned vet because I had learned so much and I was able to apply it to my vet career. But definitely towards the end, it was just kind of was a little bit more of a learning experience rather than me racing. You know what I mean? Which I'm thankful for those lessons. I was able to train with some really good people, like able to train alongside Sam and a few things like that. That I was just able to really learn that last little bit of my career.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you mentioned, like going into your vet career. And, I wanted to ask you about that too, because like you had, a pretty solid elite career. And then when you turned vet, and for a lot of people who don't know or follow the sport, vet pro is like, how would you explain that? Like pros over 30 years old, or how would you explain that?
It was 33 at the time, so they changed the age now back down to 30. But yeah, it was 33 at the time. So you had to be minimum age 33 years old, and realistically, that's about it. You didn't have to have any qualifications other than being over 33.
Yeah. Yeah. But then when you turned vet pro, like it seems like that's when almost like the biggest part of your career, like because you started winning everything, and then you start winning some pretty huge titles too. Like, what was it like from kind of like going into vet pro, and then all of a sudden, like you were the guy, you know what I mean? Like you were almost like, like the Bubba Harris of that class for the longest time. And what I thought was cool is like, I remember being all the way in Florida, like I would ask kids all the time, like, hey, who's your favorite pro? And like I would hear Tyler Brown more than almost any other name. And like I was always surprised because this is probably a couple years into your vet pro career, and like, yeah, you're winning pretty much every single race and you got the titles, but they weren't saying, Connor Fields or Nick Kimman, like they were saying Tyler Brown, and I think one thing is that you learn when you're vet pros, you learn about the social media and how to deal with the sponsors, and you were kind of crushing it on all levels at that point.
Yeah, it was a really good time. I think you're right because I think obviously elite men is so hard, right? And not to knock any pro in any way, shape, or form. They have to put all their energy and focus into that. As where a lot of those guys, like I've had regular jobs, I understand jobs, I understand expectations, I understand all of those things just in the regular day-to-day world. Whether I was working with USA Cycling or working with GT or whatever, like you have deadlines that you have to hit and things that you wanted to do. So I just took a lot of that business side and applied it to my racing. It's like, okay, when I'm at a race, I'm going to post once a day, every single day. I'm going to do 5 posts a week throughout the week. I'm going to do my clinics. I'm going to reach out to these tracks. I'm going to do this. And I just really treated my off the bike stuff like a serious job. And so then when the results hit on the track, the two really, really linked up together to kind of allow me to have a good stage and presence when I was out there racing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Could you say that you got bigger sponsors or like more money from sponsors and purses and Vet Pro than you did Elite, or what? Or what do you
Absolutely.
think?
Absolutely. Yeah. I looked at like Vet Pro as like my retirement, my retirement package. And even like that time I was finishing up with GT, and I had a lot of things that I wanted to do on GT, but because of the corporate structure, I wasn't able to. And that's when I left and I was like, forget it. I'm going to ride for myself. I'm going to ride for my program. I'm going to set up the program the way I want to. And I was far more successful financially in every aspect once I kind of went out on my own and did my own thing. I had some really good support, DK and a few other things like that. And really the relationships that I had built when I was elite, it was kind of a no-brainer for a lot of these brands. Is that I didn't even get any no's. Everybody said, yeah, for sure. We'll support you. Yeah, we'll do it. Let's go.
Yeah, yeah, because by 20 years of building the relationships and building the experience, they kind of knew who you are and what you're about. That's pretty cool. I didn't realize that you were so young when you took over the track. So if you were only 27, there was 6 years in between of you taking over the track and then turning Vet Pro, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So
Well,
then now,
that year I was 27 turning 28. So I took over the track at the end of the year. So I was 28, but yeah, still a fair amount of time for sure.
yeah, that's cool. So, and are you still racing much now? Because I don't think I've seen you at the races, or what's going on with your racing at this moment.
I was doing a lot. And then I think when I had just my baby number 2, like I didn't really have the drive and motivation to go anymore. It was 2 years ago. I flew to Houston and I was ready to race. And I called home, and my little girl, she just looked on FaceTime and said, Daddy, I want you home. I miss you. Like, why are you not home with me? And it would just kind of hit me in the head. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I've been to Houston 7 times already. Like, I need to be home with my family. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah, that's pretty cool.
and then so I took a little bit of time off and just kind of focused on family. And now I'm riding with Chase, and they're cool with me going to races or not going to races. They don't really care. So I just am kind of like, I'll just dabble here and there, go to a few races here and there, and when it fits in. And I'm kind of like a good end of the season, beginning of the year guy. I can train for a good few months, do a couple races at the end of the year, carry that through the beginning of the year, and then kind of take the summer off and focus here at the track.
Yeah. What kind of things are you doing for Chase, or like, how are you, I guess, bringing your value to them?
I think kind of a lot of the same stuff that I just do daily, right? Like on the grassroots front, because now 316 Racing is 316 Chase. So now one thing that Chase has never had is they never had kind of the family atmosphere vibe. It's very, very high-end elite pros, which is great. And they've built a great brand on that. But I'm able to bring another aspect, because now all of a sudden I'm going to have 30 kids out racing your state races, your local races, things like that on Chase, on the bike, wearing the jersey. So I think that's a good thing for them. And then just my presence that I have on like a local SoCal front, because their brand is in SoCal, but Connor's in Vegas, Joris is over in France. Like they don't have anybody here based where their brand is actually based. So now they kind of have a SoCal base again with me being here.
Yeah. And that's another thing I wanted to ask about, because you mentioned your 316, that's your team, right? So you have a team and a bike shop, or is it kind of the same thing?
Bike shop was going to be something I was going to do, an online shop. That's kind of how it started. It was actually originally 316racingonline.com. So we were going to do that. And we started getting things rolling to be like a small little online shop. And then when I took over the track, it didn't really make sense to do it. It just made sense to just have bike shops at the track. So each one of the tracks have like a small little section of our sign up building that we have bike shops at the track.
Oh, cool. So tell me more about the team that you're doing. When did you start your own team, and how, and why? Because that's a lot.
Yeah, I started 316 racing years ago, a very, very long time ago. And the goal of that was really, I was just coaching some local kids. Like parents had reached out, hey, do you want to do private lessons with my kids? Just like you, like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. And so I was working with kids, and then they didn't really have a team. So and then I was going to start the online shop. So like, cool, maybe I'll start a little team. I'll have a couple little local riders. And then that slowly just grown over the years. And then when I left GT and started riding for the team, that's when it really kind of exploded. And I mean, at times we've had riders all over the world. I've had riders in South America, in Australia, in Europe, probably close to 70 riders across the US at times. It just kind of took off.
Yeah, and you've had a couple elites on some podiums, right?
Yeah, that's the coolest thing is we had Jared Garcia, who I can't think of too many bike shop teams that can say that they've had World Cup podiums, or elite wins or elite titles. So which is pretty cool because we had Jared Garcia on the team for a couple of years who killed it. Like I said, he got World Cup podiums. He was on Team USA. Delaney Vaughn, who rode for me for a little bit, who same thing. She got elite women wins. And then obviously I was able to get a couple titles as well. So not only in the grassroots front, which we did well on, we also did good on the pro front by having myself in either elite men or elite women.
Yeah. So you're still managing that team and that thing's still booming?
Yeah, absolutely. It still goes on.
So mainly what's taking your time is you got a whole team and you got 2 BMX tracks, and then you're still riding and, doing training and working out and coaching one-on-ones. Is there anything else that I'm missing that occupies a lot of your time other than your family, right?
Yeah. I mean, I do a ton of coaching out here. I coach 6 days a week out at the track, and then just I look at any business opportunity on the side as well, see what I can do and stuff like that. Just kind of continue to grow and build outside of the BMX world too.
What kind of business opportunities are you doing outside of BMX?
I have some rental property stuff and things like that. So just looking at some real estate. That's why I love to watch what you guys do out in Florida. I think it's so great the way you guys bought that property and did the stuff that you do, and just little things like that. Cool.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that about you. So
I don't really talk about it in the BMX world too much.
Yeah, that's cool. So it seems like you're a busy guy. How are you balancing that with family?
I try to do my best to prioritize my time throughout the day, right? Like I've got a lot going on. So I try to focus on myself early in the morning as far as getting up, doing my thing, doing any workouts, training, stuff like that. In the middle of the day, I want to be there with my family and kids as much as I can. And then the evening time is when I'm out at the track, kind of serving my community, helping out, running the races or coaching kids, things like that.
Yeah. Are there some big projects that you have coming up, kind of maybe that most people don't know about that you're working on, as far as like with the 2 tracks and with the team? Are you just kind of managing and maintaining what you have, or is there something that you're kind of looking ahead for and working towards?
I mean, I always want to my goal is to keep this track the number 1 track in Southern California. So that's a huge thing for me, is making sure that this track stays number 1. We're bringing in
that track is number 1?
Yeah, we have been for the last 2 years. This is our 2nd year we've been number 1.
Nice, dude. Congrats. That's cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Which allows us to bring the state final here, which is really good for the local riders, good for our local track and economy. Obviously I did the whole shot challenge last year. So we're looking at opportunities where we can expand that and do more stuff on that. So that's actually looking to be a multi-part series this year, which all the info should be coming out soon, but we're looking at being able to open up classes to have a pro race as well as an amateur race. So looking at what we can do on the event side as well. And then have a couple of—
Who are you partnering up with that, right? Because I'm sure you're working with maybe probably Chase and a few other partners, or is that kind of just all you and your tracks?
That one would just be all me and able to kind of put the bikes fans and whoever who wants to be a part of it. We do have some good local support here in San Diego, as well as a couple people like Fly's always done a good job of supporting us and things like that. USA BMX has jumped on board. They're wanting to do a little bit more with us as well to kind of expand. So we're going to be doing one event in Tulsa at their facility there, as well as one here at San Diego BMX. So that's kind of where it starts to branch off. We look at more opportunities and stuff that we can do.
Yeah. Where are you seeing the program as a whole in, say, 3 to 5 years?
Right now, that's a good question, because I'm I don't know yet where I want to go and what I want to do as far as do I want to look to change the game as a whole of BMX, which I have my ideas on things that we could do, or do I just want to kind of hyper focus on what I do myself here inside this fence and see how we can kind of continue to grow and expand? I think both of those things are going to be great lessons that are going to help each other. I can't necessarily say personally, and not that I'm trying to hide it. I just don't know yet if I want to kind of hyper focus on what I'm doing here or take things a little bit to a broader spectrum and kind of share it.
Hmm. On a broader spectrum, what are some things that you would want to change in the game?
I think our sport it needs a handful of things if we want to grow and survive. I think USA BMX does great, and I love what they do, but there's also so much left on the table. And as far as like pro racing and stuff like that, like there's no real pro racing in America. There's going to be pros today, but let's be honest, we're going to pause the 10 intermediates so our pros can run really quick and we can get back to our 10 intermediates. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's no harm to anybody. I'm not saying anything negative on anybody's side. USA BMX does a great job for the pros in the career, but at the same time, nothing is elevating our sport. Our numbers are going down; they're not going up. So I think we always have to look at ways that we can impact the sport as a whole.
What numbers are you saying are going down?
And just as far as like local participation and stuff like that.
Really, really. So
And
you're
they not necessarily going down, flattening out to what they were before 2021 numbers, because obviously we saw a huge boom in
yeah,
BMX.
yeah. So if they're just kind of running the pros in between, really a huge amateur event, like what do you think is possible of a better option?
I think little things like we're doing with the whole shot challenge, right? Like
Yeah,
learning
yeah,
how to create events with pro riders. Because I have local families out here that I mean are very very active participants in the national series. They go, oh, Reno's a pro race, like they're disappointed by it. You know what I
mm.
mean? And
Why?
the reason they're disappointed because you are like me. Like we got to take our pro rider hats off and now go into parent brain. So Will, you have a kid, you've now invested thousands of dollars into getting your kid at this event. The pros at that point just they take longer. Your kid's going to be there longer between motos. It's more draining on your
Yeah,
kid, right? And this is where it goes back to like being able to look at things in all different perspectives and being able to understand people from all different perspectives. The pros are there. The pros want to do their thing as they should be, but also the kids are there and the parents want their kids to be able to perform their best because that's the environment that we set up for our kids now in today's sport. The two entities working together don't necessarily help both grow, as where if they were to separate a little bit, they have the ability to grow and thrive as separate entities.
yeah, yeah. I always thought it would be so much cooler to have more events, kind of like the whole shot challenge, but it just takes somebody to do it. And like for like I've thought about doing events, and I've done events too. It's so much work to put
Yeah.
on, like I couldn't imagine like the work that it took to do the whole shot challenge that even you did do, you know what I mean? And that was sweet. It was live, you had like, an audience and paid out money. And then I'm sure there's always still people to complain about this and that and this and that when it's like, dude, you just put in so much time, energy, and effort to just kind of give a good event. Do the events like that, do they bring value back to you, or do they pay you or your track in a way to make it worth it, or does it end up being just for the love of the sport?
It's a combo of the two. I mean, I think I'll get a little bit. I don't really take much money from those kind of events because I like it. I look at like the whole shot of it, the whole shot challenge that we did last one. I didn't really make any money from the whole shot challenge. My goal was to make the state final bigger, which that brings revenue back to the track.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
like pretty
yeah.
much every
So you're kind of linking it with another race on what you already have.
right, and that's what I'll try to do with any of my stuff. You know what I mean? Like everybody goes, "Oh, you have a lot going on," but they all work with each other, right? Like my
Yeah,
team this that helps the track, which helps my sponsorships, which keep the sponsors happy, which kind of allows me to do more for the team, and it kind of all works with each other. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, for sure. Because it's like in some way, the events do have to pay or reward the people who are putting in all the effort to actually do it for it to be sustainable, right? Because like the passion will it works, and but to really make something I think work long term and to keep improving it, I think almost there has to be some sort of way to reward the people who are putting in the effort.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of weird, like in BMX, right? Like we get looked on weird, almost like you're not supposed to make money if you're behind the scenes, if you're in one of those atmospheres, whether it be event promoter, track operator, whatever. Like you should just do it for the love and for the passion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it doesn't work.
But what's wrong? What's wrong with those people making a living? What's wrong with those situations?
Yeah,
Because, Will, if I pay you to teach my kid at a clinic, well, you're going to be able to make more money. You're going to be able to put more effort into your clinic. You're going to be able to
yeah,
put on for my kid. My kid's going to learn from it, and that's how business works, right? Me as a parent, I'm
yeah.
going to leave happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it seems like, just from what I've noticed, it seems like the tracks that are doing well are more ran like a business, and the tracks that are kind of falling apart, it's like when somebody doesn't get paid to do something, they don't usually do a great job. You
Right.
you know what I mean? Like when someone's paid like a good amount of money to do something, they're taking care of all of the details to do their absolute best job in any of it. So it's like, yeah, I think you made a really good point where it's like, it's okay for the tracks to make money because the more money that the tracks make, then the more money that's in the sport, and the better that the tracks can, make the track.
Yeah, I mean, I have to, because if I don't bring in the right numbers and if we're not doing enough here, I don't have a house for my family to live in, right? So it's sink or swim, and that's on me, and that's why I want to
Yeah,
provide the product possible, so more families come out here, more families get involved, and then the sport grows and everybody is thriving across the board.
yeah, yeah, and
Yep.
that's a good, healthy community, and that's something that I really love to hear is like hearing you just contributing into your own community as far as like our community as well. And it's like not forgetting that we are a part of the whole, and the better that we can do, the better that the ones around us can do, the better that our family can do, then the better our sport can do, and really all the things that we care about. Tyler, I really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy, busy schedule and
Yeah,
having this conversation with me. And yeah, maybe we'll have you on again someday.
dude. Well, thanks for the time. I really appreciate it. Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah, man. All right, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, dude. Talk to you later. See ya. Bye.
Yeah. That was pretty cool, huh, Edwin?
Wow, I totally forgot I was supposed to play a part. That was such a good conversation. I was just going back and forth and totally forgot to ask 8 questions I wrote down. Boy,
Oh
wow.
man. Oh, you should have. And I was thinking too. It's like, man, I got to give Edwin the chance to jump in here, but I had so many questions, and it was just going back and forth, and like
No, that was
there
brilliant,
was
man.
never a pause.
There was never a pause. I wanted to ask him. I think he mentioned one time where he was kind of lost and wasn't sure what direction he wanted to go with his sport, and training, et cetera. And I was curious what got him out of that. So I'll make a note of that to ask him next time we have him on the show.
Yeah,
The other question
yeah.
I had, he mentioned burnout in the sport, and I'm always curious what veteran perspectives are like in helping young people prevent burnout in their careers. So
Yeah, yeah. So we're gonna get to him on these questions and maybe throw him in the comments or just have him back on. And then in the future, we definitely gotta get you in there. Because those are
yeah,
really good questions that now you mentioned. Like I want to know too.
well, yeah, I think that's what's the interesting thing about having co-host on the show, one who's an elite athlete and one who is not. And I think it's clear who is not an elite athlete. So there's so much about BMX that I don't know. So just listening to the conversation between 2 pro athletes was really fascinating. And I kind of got lost in the conversation. It was like watching a tennis match back and forth, and it was good conversation. So yeah, I was totally fine without asking a question.
Well, next time we still gotta get you in there. But Edwin, thank you so much, man. I definitely enjoy this time, and I'm excited for our next guest.
Who is our next guest? Will, do we tell people,
Um,
or is it always a surprise?
Maybe we'll start name dropping pretty soon, but I'm not sure what order that these are going to come out in.
Fair enough.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll kind of go from there. But Yeah, we got a couple big names. You know, the next 4 or 5 are some pretty big names in the sport of BMX racing. You know, and then we got some farmers in the background and a couple doctors as well. So I'm really excited. I think this conversation went really good, and I'm excited to meet with you again tomorrow and do some more.
Yeah, I've clearly got my homework to do on BMX terminology. So I'm going to Wikipedia right after this session.
Well, all right, Edwin, let's clock this thing out, and I'll see you on the next one.
Peace, brother.
Later.